of black mana on the table. It's limiting what he can cast.
Did hit a prized amalgam, though, so he gets a couple things going here. No blue mana either to cast that Narcomoeba.
And now 3 damage as Tireless Tracker is the show-off Dark Confidant. 3 copies of Tireless Tracker in the main for Joe Bernal. That is his big threat. 3 copies. In the main, I think actually what he'd really like to find, he's main decking a full 4 Scavenging Ooze. That would be great.
Yes, you want to start going after the graveyard here. Has kind of an abundance of green mana sources already as well. So if he could get that this turn, it'd be very nice. You have to imagine if he had it, he would have played it already, though.
Here's Tireless Tracker, Verdant Catacombs. Joe's going to get a pair of clue tokens pretty quickly here.
On the other side, Justin's largely looking to find Life from the Loam. That's typically the kind of the engine card in the modern Dredge decks. He is playing 4 copies. Once you get that going, you can solve any of your mana troubles, and also you can start getting a lot of cards in hand to flash back that Conflagrate.
And we see Scourge Devil being discarded to Insolent Neonate. Scourge Devil, that's the one of. We used to see the Jacob Baugh really was the innovator on that one. He was the Dredge player last year who'd play that one all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of reminiscent of Dread Return on Flamekin Zealot, except it's just a one-card self-contained combo.
By the way, Justin dredges up another Narcomoeba and 2 more prized amalgams. He does it during main phase so that they come into play on his turn, untapped.
And with that tracker only being able to get up to 3 toughness this turn, getting in those hits with the prized amalgam now seems like a really nice spot. Has the flyers with the Narcomoebas as well. He has to show some concern as to his own life total as we see what Joe could possibly crack back for. He has Dark Confidant. The Tireless Tracker on Joe's turn could be up to 5 in addition to a Treetop Village swing. That's 10, but that is shy of Walker's 11-point life total. It makes some sense to hang back with one of the Narcomoebas anyway, though you're likely to get hit by a Fatal Push if you do that, so maybe you do just get aggressive. You're going to want to do the math on how much your damage output this turn is relative to how much you're going to have to Conflagrate for lethal. But this deck can do a lot of damage with Conflagrate.
So here's the Unearth of Scourge Devil. All creatures are going to get +1/+0 this turn.
That makes attacking with the Narcomoebas kind of easy.
Right, so the Narcomoebas will get in for 4, and then the rest of the attack is lethal so it's going to force a block.
Mm-hmm. You don't really want to hang on to Dark Confidant once the damage output on the other side of the table starts getting this high. So that one's probably going to jump in front for a chump block.
Joe's going to fetch down to 14. He did have a Fatal Push in hand.
Scourge Devil, of course, has a 5 converted mana cost, but you can go for either a Narcomoeba or a prized amalgam here.
Sure. Gets another clue token, and though he'll struggle to find the time to crack those.
Right. Yeah, it's not looking like it's going to be that kind of game. And generally, it's just not going to be when you're playing against Dredge.
Fatal Push. Makes sense, he'll hit one of the amalgams. They represent the most damage. It's just too easy, though, for Dredge to really recover in this kind of matchup. That Joe just doesn't have the clock or the interaction.
Mm-hmm. It does not take too long for those amalgams to pop right back out of the graveyard. You can save your life total for now, but you have to be able to get some hits in, and if you're throwing away all of your creatures, you don't really have a crackback. Joe certainly would have preferred to have a Tarmogoyf here to this point in the game. Yeah, he's going to trade away the Tracker and throw away the Confidant. Just go for the most possible life. And to be fair, if he draws Scavenging Ooze on this turn, it will be really good, having put both of those prized amalgams in the graveyard. So kind of playing to that out. Even if he has to crack 1 clue and he still gets there, it's not the end of the world. Looks like largely lands and Liliana of the Veil in hand,
Yeah,
though.
there's a lot that's going to be difficult here. He's meant, look, it's a Hissing Quagmire, a Treetop Village, a Liliana of the Veil. He's going to crack a clue, and he finds another land. It's a Verdant Catacombs. And Liliana's tough, but none of the modes are very good here. -1 to take care of a Narcomoeba is what Joe picks. It's better than having both players discard a card.
Right, just giving Justin some option to discard some card that he wants in the graveyard anyway.
Yeah. He will dredge Life from the Loam.
Yeah, it's another Stinkweed Imp there, nothing really else of consequence. Haven't seen any of the 4 Bloodghast just yet, but with Joe now on 10, those are becoming ever more relevant.
Yeah, Justin's going to cast Life from the Loam. Three lands available for him here. Finally, we'll get him that black mana source on the following turn if he wants it. Though not even interested, he finds 3 red-green lands.
Yeah, it doesn't really need to cast black spells in this game. If you find yourself in a tough spot, you can throw a Stinkweed Imp in front of, say, a Tarmogoyf. That's just kind of not the game that we're watching. Given that he's getting 3 lands back, it's kind of free. But, you know, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, so he has those 2 Amalgams in the graveyard. Does not look like he has a route to get those back on this turn.
All right. So
going for a big
big Conflagrate from the yard. That was the one he cast earlier this game. It looks like he's discarding 6, keeping 1 in hand. Remember, you can't go 1 at Liliana and 5 at your opponent. You can't split up damage that way. So he's likely to send all of this at Joe, and then if he wants to kill Narcomoeba, he'll use kill Liliana, he'll use the Narcomoeba for that point.
Right. And he discards multiple dredgers here, so if he dredges for his draw step and finds Faithless Looting, then he'll be able to dredge a couple more times by flashing back the looting.
Right. He's got to be concerned about the damage on the way back, though. Joe, as of last turn, has 2 Treetop Villages.
6 is a lot.
Yeah.
It's not 9. Justin very alive to just milling over a couple Bloodghasts here.
And look at Justin. He's going to ignore Liliana. Sends it at Joe.
Interesting to go down to 1 card off of Conflagrate and to ignore Liliana.
I guess it makes a Bloodghast lethal. Because next turn, Bloodghast and Narcomoeba can join up.
Sure. Yeah, that way you only have to find 1.
Joe, though, not going to send both villages this turn. He cracks a clue, finds a land, and picks up his cards.
Yeah, Joe's cards really just didn't do very much. Technically, a bad dredge from Walker there would be beneficial for Joe. I don't think he was on 0%, but he was very low.
So game 1, despite a mulligan to 6, a loss of the die roll, and a slow start, does still go the way of Dredge. Justin Walker taking the first game. To me, that shows just how far behind Joe is in game 1.
Certainly when he's not drawing Scavenging Ooze. He also didn't even draw a Tarmogoyf.
Yeah. Well, we'll look at the sideboards and options Joe has when we come back with game 2 in just 1 minute. All right, so we are back with game number 2 here. Joe Bernal starting off our tournament with black-green mid-range. He takes a loss, game 1 to Justin Walker. He had a pretty good start, thought seizing a good card, getting a early Dark Confidant, just hadn't found his graveyard hate. Now, and he gets a small upgrade out of the sideboard, but not as much as I would want to see.
No, you see you have some stuff there. So full sideboard here, 3 Surgical Extraction, 3 Collective Brutality, 3 Fulminator Mage, 2 Damnation, 2 Liliana the Last Hope, and 2 Engineered Explosives. The big hits, the 3 Surgical Extraction. You can hit an early Dredger, even go for a Prize Amalgam or Bloodghast, even Narcomoeba in some games. It can swing things in your favor. It's not bad. Damnation can play catch-up. That one's not nearly as exciting, but you do kind of want to reach for it anyway. But mostly we're just looking at these surgicals.
Yeah, there's the surgical extractions. On Justin Walker's side, I would expect him to have a little here because this is the matchup he just inherently is good against.
Right.
3 Leyline of the Void, 3 Collective Brutality, 3 Ancient Grudge, 2 Knot of the Bone, 2 Lightning Axe, 2 Ray of Revelation. Does he use any of this?
So mostly you're thinking about ways that you could lose the game. That's going to come down to what hate cards your opponent could have. You got to have Scavenging Ooze on your radar, and for that reason, you could reach for the Lightning Axes. Collective Brutality, I think, is maybe going too far on that front, but I like an axe or 2 in this matchup.
What are you hoping to hit with a Lightning Axe?
Scavenging Ooze.
Okay, that's a good card to hit. I don't suppose you can Collective Brutality a Scavenging Ooze. That's wishful thinking.
Yeah, that's just almost never going to happen. Also, if you just like have to discard a creature to the Brutality, say even the graveyards are empty, but you want to like, I guess you don't have to escalate it in this matchup, so that's really not going to come up too often, but there should usually be some food available.
I suppose if I do, right, because there actually is a window. If I discard a creature to escalate a Brutality that you just can't to kill cast Scavenging Ooze.
Right.
Oh, okay. I started wanting to make that play while they had green mana up, I guess.
No, it would not be ideal.
Bernal on a mulligan here.
Yes, seeing as there's generally not an instant or sorcery that you care about in this matchup, you don't really need to escalate, and life totals are not super important. Something to consider in other matchups, though. It's kind of free to throw 1 or 2 axes in the deck, though. It's another discard outlet on top of interacting meaningfully.
We see Inquisition of Kozilek again from Bernal. This time, we'll look at the start. It is 4 lands, Faithless Looting, Insolent Neonate, Prized Amalgam. Again, this is a hand that looks like it could be disrupted by a discard spell.
Yeah, so there's 2 discard outlets. Kind of the thing about this hand, though, is the only Dredger is Dakmor Salvage.
Okay.
This is kind of a tempting one to actually mulligan. It's an aggressive keep. We'll see if it works out. But once one of these discard spells are out, you don't really get a lot going.
I assume the Faithless Looting is lost again.
Yeah.
That's just...
It just does more than the Insolent Neonate does.
They're the same card, but looting is better at it.
Right.
Joe's actually thinking, though, as to which one he wants to take.
Possibly he has access to a surgical extraction. You can think about taking the looting and then going for surgical. That'd be very aggressive.
He does take Faithless Lootings. We'll go to Walker. Walker picks up a 5th land. This is a dangerous situation for him. Here's Insolent Neonate.
Yeah, because the salvage dredges so little, it'd be interesting to see if he actually goes for the aggressive dredge. In the face of the Scavenging Ooze, not very tempting.
And he will. Cathartic Reunion, Prized Amalgam, our Dredge. But you're right, Dredge 2 just doesn't feel very strong here.
If he milled over Conflagrate exactly, that's what he's shooting for there.
And Justin Walker draws another land.
Yeah, you don't want to call it too early, but he is in a lot of trouble.
And this one's a Steam Vent, so, okay, blue mana.
You can cast your Amalgams and your Narcomoebas.
Well, you can't get your Amalgams anymore out of the graveyard as Joe Bernal takes care of that with Scavenging Ooze and makes it a 3/3. He'll hit Walker down to 17.
Imagine you'll see Joe get that Faithless Looting out of the graveyard with the Ooze as well.
Yeah, before Justin untaps with a 3rd land. He'll do exactly that.
You could get fancy and wait and see if they discard creatures, but yeah, not really worth it. You give them 2 more natural draws to a potential answer to the Scavenging Ooze.
Bloodghast was the draw for Walker. He will cast a Prized Amalgam thanks to that Steam Vents.
That's all well and good, but the Ooze is about to outsize it, eating the Insolent Neonate.
Goes up to 4-4.
You still get to play the game, but not looking like you get to win the game.
Treetop Village and a swing from Bernal. Interesting to see how he plays this one. He actually did have Tireless Tracker. Could have had a clue here, but it looks like instead he'll make Dark Confidant and leave up green mana.
Yeah, this makes a good amount of sense. The Dark Confidant just gives you cards for free. A little bit more low maintenance, so not as much of a heavy hitter as the Tireless Tracker. And there's a lot of value in leaving up that green mana.
Justin Walker hits the basic forest. It is another land. His hand is all lands and Bloodghast. Can't even cast the Bloodghast yet.
Right. And if he could, wouldn't do too much. Bloodghast, of course, not able to block. Joe at 20, not making good attacks either. Joe picks up Abrupt Decay off Dark Confidant. I believe he's holding a Maelstrom Pulse as well.
He'll decay away the Amalgam. He'll eat it away with the Ooze in a second here as he swings for make that 7. And looks like Bernal's going to send it to a third game.
Yeah, he has these attackers available again next turn, and then they also will have that Treetop Village if he wants to go along those lines. Though Walker needs to draw something good right now if he even wants to force Joe to do anything. Scavenging Ooze eats the Prized Amalgam. Justin picks up another Bloodghast and picks up the rest of his cards. So we are going to game 3.
Scavenging Ooze does the trick here. That's another spot, I think, where you mentioned it might be a mulligan for Justin. He did keep a hand on the draw that really just doesn't beat a Scavenging Ooze, and that's a concern.
It also just really didn't get much going in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Justin drew a lot of lands. He kept a land. I mean, especially with a dredge deck, if you keep a 4-land hand and then draw 3 more on the first turns, you're not going to beat much of anything.
Yeah, what it largely comes down to is that you get to mulligan those hands. Yeah, this is a deck that mulligans pretty well. We'll see how things shake up in game 3.
So game 3 will put Justin Walker back on the play here. It'll be the decider between Bernal and Walker, and we'll get you that in just a minute. So game 3 will be underway shortly here for Justin Walker and Joe Bernal. This is going to be the first game which puts Walker actually on the play. Each other time he's had a Faithless Looting hit by a discard spell.
Those discard spells do get quite a bit worse on the draw. That much is certainly true. But interestingly, that sideboard game, Joe didn't win it with a sideboard card. That was one of his 4 main deck Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of respect for the matchup. And you were thinking, I was thinking actually in game 1, when we had that turn 1 Inquisition into Dark Confidant, and Joe controlled Confidant for about 4 turns, that, hey, there's 4 main deck Scavenging Oozes. You know, Joe actually has a reasonable chance to win it.
Yeah. For the majority of that game, up until I think the last turn, he was very alive to just drawing Scavenging Ooze. It can be too slow, but some of these games it can run away with. This particular build, when you're playing just green-black, you typically will have an abundance of green mana to leverage with it.
All right. Joe's keeping. Justin's keeping. Let's go. It's going to be Dakmor Salvage to start out by Walker. We'll see if there's another discard spell looming. It's not just Hissing Quagmire for Bernal. Got to worry then about something like Cathartic Reunion, something huge from Justin here. Will that be the play? Looks like it is. Here's 2 mana. Here's Cathartic Reunion. How bad's the damage? Let's see. Golgari Thug discarded. Is there a second Dredger? There's not. It's Scourge Devil. So,
okay.
Will the Dredger's chain? First draw is Golgari Thug. With Cathartic Reunion on the stack, Joe is going to surgically extract Golgari Thug. So, Ryan, there's actually a window here where he can make this play.
Right. So Cathartic Reunion has an additional cost. You pay your mana, but you have to discard 2 cards to cast it in the first place. So we have these Thugs in the graveyard and a spell on the stack. Joe is going to use this window to surgical Golgari Thug. There will be no dredging off of this Reunion.
Yeah, that means there's really Justin's just going to draw 3 cards here.
Mm-hmm. That's not what the deck is trying to do.
Yeah, it might be fine. He may get a good reload for next turn, but it's certainly for now he's been kept at bay.
Mm-hmm. And this lined up really well for Bernal. He had the surgical, and Justin did not discard 2 unique dredgers, which would be the way he would get out of this.
Yeah.
So, good tactics there by Bernal. We'll see what Walker can assemble. He's not just dead. The deck still has more dredgers in it. Thug, not even the best dredger. Stinkweed Imp available somewhere in there. Another Cathartic Reunion in hand. So Joe does still have some work to do. Another surgical, if he's able to get a Stinkweed Imp, though, that might be lights out.
Yeah, there aren't that many dredge cards in the deck. 1, 2, 3. Looks like a pair of lands and a Bloodghast picked up from Justin Walker. That is less impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not doing too much anymore.
And Joe's going to take a look with Inquisition. He actually has another surgical in his hand. So we see 4 lands, Cathartic Reunion, Bloodghast. That's pretty easy. I think we're taking Cathartic Reunion.
Yeah, not a very good argument for taking Bloodghast. If you really thought that card mattered, you could take it and surgical it on the spot. I can't imagine that that's worth it. If Justin just top-decked a Dredger to go at that Reunion, it would start going off in a big way as well.
Yeah, now Justin can actually Ghost Quarter his own Dakmor Salvage and build a Dredger over the course of 2 turns.
He dredged for 2.
Yeah, it's not great.
A lot of work for a low payoff.
Lightning Axe, the draw here for Justin Walker.
So that one would be good if Joe was on Scavenging Ooze. Doesn't do anything to solve this surgical problem. Joe does need to find something to actually deal damage at some point, and looks like he picked up Tarmogoyf.
Here we go. Yeah, Tarmogoyf. That'll do it. Shocks for Overgrown Tomb. And Scavenging Ooze is going to be a play. It looks like he has a couple ways to win here. Lightning Axe, easy play, discarding Bloodghast for Justin Walker. Now, because of how that works, once again with additional costs, I was going to say Joe could have exiled away the Bloodghast. He's going to hit the Scourge Devil instead.
Yeah, he could have hit the Bloodghast. The Scourge Devil is another thing that comes out of the graveyard. I think Joe's going to have a reasonable time playing against the Bloodghast, and it looks like he's actually going to surgical it anyway.
Okay. Sure, he'll surgically extract away the Bloodghast. That would be why he didn't eat it. Wait until Justin Walker draws for turn.
Hoping to hit another one out of the hand.
Does not. Justin drew Insolent Neonate.
Joe's very far ahead in this game. I estimated that surgical was very aggressive. I'd be inclined to hold on to it, but it's not. If you're taking away value anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the Bloodghast was going to come back into play next turn, so there is that. I almost want to see him just use the Ooze to eat the Bloodghast and then leave the Scourge Devil there for a turn.
Right.
It's a lot of respect that Joe paid Scourge Devil on that play.
Right.
So Justin will cast the Neonate. You mentioned win conditions. Joe will have to keep drawing them. Here's Tarmogoyf. His hand looks to be Tireless Tracker, a third Surgical Extraction, and a Fatal Push. Maybe does third Surgical explain the Bloodghast play to you?
It makes it make a lot more sense. If you've drawn all your Surgical, you still have it available, and Justin's kind of a long way from actually forcing one. Instant sorcery creature in graveyard, so that is a 3/4 Tarmogoyf.
Fatal Push will hit Insolent Neonate. Well, it'll try to.
Yeah, it'll be able to target anyway.
And Justin will discard to draw.
I do like the play by Joe here. You don't give Justin the window to draw a Dredger and use the Neonate to dredge another time. It looks like just more lands and a prized amalgam for Justin Walker. That one slightly smaller than Tarmogoyf this time. Land did just hit the graveyard off the Neonates. The Tarmogoyf is a 4/5 now.
Justin's going to go ahead and shock here for Steam Vents. See what he's doing with all that mana.
This is blue source.
Okay, so he drew Prized Amalgam.
Yep.
And there is the play. Here's the 3/3. That'll work for now. It does not outsize Tarmogoyf. Let's go back to Joe. I mentioned Goyf already up to a 3/4. Now make that a 4/5 of instant sorcery land creature. The big 4. And then there's, oh, that's how I was calling Tarmogoyf. There's the easy 4 and the hard 4.
Right. Yeah. There's the standard fare and the weird ones.
So we have all the standard ones, and then the weird ones of Enchantment, Artifact, Tribal, and Planeswalker. We don't have any of those.
Right. This is a matchup. There's a good chance that Joe is just off of his Lilianas or lighter on his Lilianas post sideboard.
Stinkweed Imp from Walker. Actually a very good card here.
Yeah. It has a Death Touch-esque ability where you don't want to get creatures involved in combat with it. So if Joe can get it off the battlefield, and if he does have that third Surgical, solves that problem pretty easily.
Justin makes his 6th land, passes. He is empty-handed. And go back over to Joe. Looks like he did draw land. He'll play the Treetop Village because that nets him a clue from Tireless Tracker.
Too bad this artifact doesn't go to the graveyard.
Yeah, I'll pump his Tarmogoyf more. It does, but just for a second.
Right. Not long enough to be meaningful.
If you had Disciple of the Vault, it would count.
Ooh, Disciple of the Vault, Tireless Tracker.
I like this deck.
It's a new combo deck. It's a little slow, I think, for Modern.
You bleed him out while drawing extra cards. It's a control strategy.
I do like everything that we're doing, except for the fact that it's stapled to fragile creatures.
Except the 1/1 for 1. You don't like that part?
Not super into that.
Well, I'll play some Chromatic Stars, too.
Ooh. This was nice for Justin Walker.
Yeah, another Stinkweed Imp.
Makes it so Joe has to deal with both of them if he wants to Surgical them meaningfully.
Draws Scavenging Ooze.
So Joe, he's not messing around. He came to battle with 3 Maelstrom Pulse this weekend. If he could produce one of those, that's his ideal draw.
Yeah, and game 2, he actually ended the game with a Maelstrom Pulse in hand, so I would believe at least one of those pulses is still in the deck.
Right, certainly. Yeah, that one doesn't get worse on the draw, where you might see him board out some of the discard spells on the draw, for example.
Right. Scavenging Ooze from Bernal. Now, there is a copy of Collective Brutality in Joe's hand that once he has another land, he can use that with Scavenging Ooze to permanently get rid of a Stinkweed Imp.
Yes. So that'll be available as early as next turn.
A third Stinkweed Imp for Walker. You're really just cheering for the Maelstrom Pulse now. Swing for 2 puts Joe down to 9.
Joe certainly is. I'll say that much.
Yeah. Gets rid of the Neonate. And his own Ooze. So yeah, he puts his Tarmogoyf down to 3/4 as both creatures are gone.
Looks like Joe picked up Abrupt Decay, so we can start going for these Stinkweed Imps one at a time.
Right. Collective Brutality, and he's thinking about escalating it. He will, using his discard spell.
Ooh.
I think he's going for life gain.
I assume. More the damage than the life gain, probably. But
Yeah,
gets both anyway.
So Joe up to 13, Justin down to 12. A creature in the graveyard, so it's back to a 4/5, and he will swing with a 4/4 Scavenging Ooze and a 4/5 Tarmogoyf. And Walker will be down to 4 if he does not block. And then post-combat, he'll eat another one. Scavenging Ooze up to 5/5, walk Joe up to 14. Things are looking good here for Bernal.
Yeah. With Walker just empty-handed, not a lot he can even do.
Lightning Axe drawn for Walker. Now he can actually cast it.
Yeah, 6 lands on the battlefield. Scavenging Ooze is a 5/5. That's something.
There we go. Full mana Lightning Axe.
And no creatures
right
left
at the
over.
Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, won't be able to grow in response.
Yeah, I think Joe looks, is this happening? Yeah, I guess it is. All right. Yep, it's gone. Tarmogoyf back up to a 4/5. Bernal, Walker has to be careful. You see he'll swing for 1.
Yeah, from 4, both of Joe's creatures are lethal.
Yeah, well, the tracker technically isn't lethal, but it's gotten very close. You also have to watch out those treetop villages, and remember, they have trample.
Yes. They're pretty close to lethal as well. Joe still does have Abrupt Decay, though.
Fatal Push of a pickup for Joe. Well, he needs to trigger Revolt.
Yeah, if he wants to hit these creatures.
Yeah, he has this Abrupt Decay. He's going to decay away the Prized Amalgam. Swing with both. Yeah, they're both 4 power.
Yeah, that should do it.
Okay, it's on you, Justin. No cards, you're tapped out. And he picks him up. It is Joe Bernal, black-green mid-range. This is a surprise here. It actually wins the match over Dredge.
Yeah, it wins both the sideboard games. Heavy sideboard cards happening there in Game 3. Joe actually cast 2 Surgical Extractions, had the third one in his hand for the bulk of the game there. Game 2 just kind of dominated with the Scavenging Ooze, but you gotta be happy if you're Joe Bernal winning against Dredge with this deck.
So black-green mid-range up. It takes the first round. He's at 1-0. Now, Ryan, I talked a bit about, and this might be the last weekend we talk about this distinction, how